Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. Let's go ahead and do a mid-month reading update, a reading update in general, what I've been reading this week. Let's talk about some books that I've read. Okay, so I have been really struggling with putting videos up. I know you don't need to hear that, I don't need to say that, but like I have this desire to make videos, to put videos out, and then when it comes right down to it, I feel so pressed for time, still trying to catch up on everything from my surgery early in the year, and just stressed. And also I feel like maybe partly it's because I have taken so much time off from making videos. I do feel like a little bit of how comfortable I feel in front of the camera is kind of there, so maybe I have a little bit of fear. I don't know, it seems silly. Anyway, I really want to get back to either vlogging or doing weekly reading wrap-ups because I miss talking about the books that I've been reading, and I think especially right now, and because I've had such a great reading month. So let's talk about them. So we're going to talk about all the books that I've read so far in April. I've read 4 books and I've loved them all. I had 2 historical romances, a sci-fi book, and a fantasy romance. So the first book that I read is Glow of the Everflame. So this is book 2 in, I don't even know what this series is called, Everflame series, I'm not sure. This is a very popular fantasy romance series, and I feel like what really attracted me to this series is that people said the feeling they got from reading this book is the closest that they have experienced since reading ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I was like, that really intrigued me, you know? Like, I'm never necessarily drawn in if a book is blurbed to be exactly like A Court of Thorns and Roses, because I feel like a lot of times that's just a marketing ploy. But when readers say this made me feel close to what I felt when I read that, then I'm like, okay, I'm intrigued. So I know this is pretty popular. It's been out for a while. The last book, I think, or maybe not the last. Yeah, maybe it is the last. The 4th book comes out in June, I believe. June or July, I don't know. Anyway, I read this book. The whole series, I'm not going to go into too much detail about what this specific book is about, but the whole series is about, there's this ruling class of people called the Descended, and they are descended from gods, so they're human and gods, and they really look upon humans with a lot of disdain, and humans don't have as many rights, and oftentimes are treated very poorly and sometimes even killed, and a union between Descended and humans is forbidden. So there's this sort of magical powers that are also here in this book, and I don't feel like there's a lot of explanation about what they are, but that's the gist of it. And so obviously there's going to be some type of an uprising. We have our main heroine, who was a healer in the first book. Her mother goes missing. She sets out on sort of like a quest to find her and starts realizing that she has some powers. There are some things with her history and who she is that put her right in the heart of the court to try and maybe bring down the rebellion, or maybe try and bridge sides. Anyway, it's not a super unique story, and there are story beats to the whole series that feel very, very familiar, and I think that I penalized that in the first book a little bit more because it felt just too derivative of books that I've read before. Not in a specific way of how it was written, but in the feeling that it gave me. Like, we would come upon a story beat and I'd be like, I know this is going to happen, and it would. And that there is a certain amount of appeal there for readers, you know, because it can give you that feeling of familiarity, and it can help you to get into a book and really just to sort of get lost. But when that happens to me too often, and this is something that I've been seeing a lot in fantasy romances specifically, it really kind of turns me off. So that was something that I didn't love about the first book. I gave the first book 3 stars. I don't even remember if I've made a video about that book. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But this book I enjoyed a lot more. I gave Glow of the Everflame 4 stars. Super enjoyed this one. I thought it was very fun. I also had struggles with the pacing in the first book, and I feel like a lot of those pacing issues were pretty much resolved here, where it felt like the story had more flow. Things were happening, and not just necessarily things happening, but things leading to us having that feeling of what's going to happen next. You know, like I kind of, especially in a fantasy book, in any type of a book, I need to feel that mixture of, I don't know what's going to happen next. What's going to happen next? So I've got that like sort of curiosity element, whether that's in the relationship or whether that's in a plot. I need that element to be there to keep me interested. And this book had that, and I really enjoyed it. I also deeply love the romance in this book specifically. I love the tension. I love where this romance is headed. I just had a great time with this, and there were a few minor problems that I had with it, just enough to make me feel like it wasn't quite a 5-star, and part of that is that even though I was talking about the pacing was better, there were still times in this book where I felt like I could set it down and I wasn't like hungry to pick it back up again, you know? And for me, that's usually always a sign that that's not a 5-star read. Something about it is keeping me from just like going at it at a breakneck pace, you know? So I gave this one 4 stars, but I really recommend this series. If you like fantasy romance and by some chance you haven't read it yet, I would highly recommend it. It's worth the read for sure. I read the first one on Kindle and audio, and the second one I just did straight audio. The third book is like 1,000 pages, and I'm waiting for the audio, which is going to be released in May. So that one was a fun one and a great one to start my month off with. So the next book that I read, I believe, is The Notorious Lord Knightley by Lorraine Heath. I have not really been in a historical romance mood until this month, and I was like just so hungry and thirsty for historical romance again. So I went to Lorraine Heath because I have had this book waiting for me when I was in the mood for it. Now, this is her Chessmen series. This is book 2 in that series, and I didn't love the first book. The first book was honestly pretty disappointing. I gave it 3 stars because it's still Lorraine Heath and she's still a great author. The second book I liked much, much better. I also gave this book 4 stars. Really enjoyed this, was able to get swept up in it right away. Loved the romance in here pretty much entirely. Like, really, honestly, I don't have any complaints about the romance. I feel like the romance had great tension. It had great chemistry. There were some really great emotional moments in here. We have a very sensitive hero who is full of flaws and has made a very, very, very big mistake. Maybe not even mistake, but he made a choice. Okay, let me tell you what the book is about, shall I? So basically we have this book that is being circulated at this time that is sort of salacious. It doesn't go into like explicit detail, but it's talking about a woman and her affair with this man. And she's describing how she feels about him in a way that, again, isn't explicit, but is definitely a little salacious for the time. She's talking about how much she desired him and how much she loved being with him. Like, it was just this that's sort of taking the society by storm. And there are people who are determined to know who wrote the book. So Regina is our heroine, and she actually is the author of this book. And it's basically a memoir of experiences that she had with our hero, Lord Knightley, who, they fell in love when they were young. She is actually a by-blow daughter, so she doesn't have nobility. He is like the spare, I think, of an earl. I can't remember what title his dad has. I think maybe he's an earl. And so they are going to get married, and they're deeply in love. It's not just a marriage of convenience, like they are in love. And then something happens where Lord Knightley calls off the wedding, like on the day they're going to get married. And she is understandably devastated and really kind of cast out of society. And so she's kind of trying to live her life from there on out. And that's how she comes across writing this book and earning a living through it, basically. But when things start to come out that maybe may reveal her personality, or not her personality, that she is the one who wrote this book, because again, it's like nobody knows who wrote it. She doesn't want people to know, because then that's going to, sink her down in society even further. And she's trying to marry this other guy. And so as soon as that happens, she ends up getting Lord Knightley to try and help her to keep her identity secret. And then they meet up after all these years, and they see that they still have the same amount of chemistry. They still have feelings for each other. And like, I am such a sucker for that when you read that in a romance where like their feelings never went away and they meet after a span of years, like I just love that so much. I love it with my whole heart. This also has a secret baby in it, so if that is something that you like, pick this up. If that's something that you hate, don't pick this up. But I really enjoyed this book. And again, there were only a few things that kept this from being a 5-star. And one of them is how easily the resolution happened at the end when they end up getting together. Because there is a secret, there is a reason why he called off the wedding. And when that ends up getting resolved so they can be together in the end, I just sort of felt like it was way too easy. It was just way too easy, especially when you consider the ramifications of that choice for Regina. I just felt like I wanted there to be more struggle for them to get together at the end, basically. So this was still a really fun, really enjoyable read. 4 out of 5 stars. It's just that ending kind of let me down because it just felt like way too easy. I wanted there to be more struggle because I felt like she had struggled a lot, and just for it to just sort of like everything be okay. It just was like, I don't know. I don't really love that. But that's really my only gripe with it. The next book that I read is Project Hail Mary. This is a sci-fi book that has been on my radar. You know, I've heard of this author for a long, long time, but I really kind of wasn't sure if he was the one for me or if I was going to really like his books. But it wasn't until, I think maybe 1 or 2 years ago, that Rachel from Raven Haired Reader read Project Hail Mary and vlogged about it and talked about it and said how much she loved it. And that was the thing that really put it on my radar, because I know Rachel reads a lot of fanro. She reads a lot of genres, but I didn't really, the way she talked about it, how much it made her feel, I was like, oh, maybe this is a book I will like. So I've had the audiobook forever because I picked it up during an Audible sale for like $2. And I've been in a sci-fi mood this year, and I typically am not in a sci-fi mood. It's probably, other than horror, sci-fi is well, no, horror, lit fic, and then probably sci-fi. But I have really been enjoying the sci-fi I've picked up this year. I want to do a video talking about all of the books that I've read so far, because I have January, February, March to catch you all up on. But I really enjoyed this. I gave it 5 stars. I was completely bowled over with how much this book made me feel. The basic premise of it is we have our hero who is our main character, who is a junior high teacher. And he teaches science, and he ends up being the one who finds the answer that is going to potentially and hopefully save all of mankind, because not only is humanity in grave danger from something that they found in space that is causing the sun to stop heating, basically gradually, but also kind of drastically, so that to the point where if they don't do something to stop it within 30 years, like, all of humanity will be gone. So there's this time crunch, this pressure to try and figure this out and to try and stop it. And he ends up being the key to that. So I really, really loved how this book opened up, because you don't really know anything about him. He doesn't remember a lot of things. He wakes up in space. So you're getting these flashbacks of memories of what happened, how he came to be here, but it's all revealed very, very gradually. So you don't get all of the information at once. And so you have that sort of back plot from the past coming, and then the plot in the future where as he's trying to remember, he's also trying to save the world, basically. And then he ends up meeting this alien out in space, this alien life form, and who is described in a way that we would probably find to be very terrifying, or at the very least distasteful. And they develop this friendship, and they start working together to try and save not only our world, but the alien world as well. And that relationship is one of my favorite relationships I have ever read about. I loved so much how deeply human this book was, and how through not only the main character's flaws and faults and problems, like, he's not a 100% heroic character. He has a lot of fear, and he has a lot of faults, and he doesn't always rise up to the occasion. But when it matters, he does. And the thing that makes him rise up is his love for this other little alien. And it just, like, it's so precious. Their friendship is precious and adorable. This book was funny. This book was clever. I felt like the sci-fi was very easily digestible. I really am interested in science, but it's not like I'm an expert by any means. So I do like sci-fi that feels approachable in that way. Kind of reminiscent of like a Jurassic Park, where I'm familiar enough with the idea that I'm like, I could suspend my disbelief and feel like, yeah, this could happen. Like, that's how I felt like this science was here. Again, I'm not a science expert by any means, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun, really very approachable, very heartwarming. And even though, like, the overall plot feels very heavy and very fraught with the potential for disaster, this book feels so cozy. I just loved it. I was very, very impressed, and just can't recommend this enough. And I really particularly liked how the author took this friendship and the way our main character felt, his last name is Grace, for this alien, and the choices that he made, some sacrifices he made for this alien life and for that planet's people, like, sort of the dichotomy with that and the people back on Earth and some of the choices that they made that led to our hero being in space. I just felt like, I think this is something that sci-fi does really, really well, and it was done to perfection here, where you take something that isn't humanity, that isn't what we know in this world, and something that is different. So this alien colony, this alien people, this alien planet. And by showing that interaction with our human main character, it shows humanity in such a different and more beautiful light because of the way that they interact together and the choices that they make, and how that was really contrasted with some of the choices that the humans made back on Earth. And I just loved it. I loved it so much. So this book lived up to the hype for me. I thought it was fantastic. I could definitely see myself rereading this. It was just so fun, and I loved it. I loved it very much. So okay, now the last book that I want to talk about is another historical romance. It is called Adjacent But Only Just by Nicole Van. I don't know how you say her last name. This is book 2 in a series of historical romances that I read the first one in December. I believe I vlogged about it, and I gave the first one 4 stars. This feels different than your typical historical romance, but it also is very, very, very character driven on both the hero and heroine, and that's something that I really, really love. I think this author is incredible. I really love how she builds her romances to be very slow building, but also very, very satisfying. Like, I think it was about 70% of this book when they have their first kiss, and it was one of the most romantic, swoony kisses that I have ever read, to the point where I was getting butterflies. And like, that doesn't happen to me when I read romances very often. I just feel like she had the tension drawn out so well to where they finally kiss, and the way that she describes like how he feels about her and how he touches her face, like, it just was so romantic. This is one of the most romantic books I've read in a really, really long time, and I just adored it. I adored it so much. It was just perfection. The basic plot is our heroine is this author. She's really kind of well known, kind of lauded in society. Her dad is some member of the clergy, and she is very well known as an author, like really great use of her words, but she kind of secretly, under this secret identity, writes this other type of fiction that is it's not salacious, but it's kind of like a Penny Dreadful type of thing. I don't know if that's exactly what it was, but something that society doesn't see as highly as the writing that she actually does. So she doesn't want anybody to know about what she actually writes, because it could put her father's career at risk and all kinds of stuff like that. And society is dead set on her marrying Ethan Penlaith, who we meet in book 1 very briefly, and because he is a very accomplished, lauded poet. And society just thinks that these two writers, it's just going to be the love story for the ages, right? So they end up meeting, and the first person that she meets isn't actually Ethan, it's his older brother, Malcolm, who we do see quite a bit in the first book of this series. Now, Malcolm is a widower. He lost his wife in childbirth and also lost the baby. So he has a big time broken heart, because she was the love of his life. Like, they were deeply, deeply in love. And when it came time for their first child to be born, he lost not only the baby, but also his wife. So he is really kind of dealing with those wounds of guilt and grief. And so when he meets Leah at first, he feels things for her that he has never felt since he met his wife. And he's very conflicted about how he feels about her and if it's okay that he feels about that. And even though in his heart he knows that his wife who had passed away would never want him to be alone, he's still sort of really struggling with that. But he can't help but feel drawn to her. And add to that the complexity that she is intended for his little brother. Like, it's pretty angsty in a really great way. I loved this book. I thought it was so good, so well written, so beautifully crafted. Like, the way that she creates her characters and builds emotion, I think is just a thing of beauty. And I just adored this book. It's probably my favorite historical romance that I've read in a really, really long time. So I found out about this author because of Lindy on Instagram. Reading Lindy. I'll tag her and Rachel down below. I guess I can't tag Lindy. I'll link her Instagram, but I love this author. Both books were fantastic, but this one was definitely my favorite. Like, just so freaking good. So, all right, my friends, those are the books that I have read so far. I was going to do like a currently reading, but I think maybe I'll wait and save that for next week. So let me know how y'all are doing, and let me know what you are reading or what you have read and if you liked it. And if you have made it this far, please feel free to leave me any type of spring flower, because the flowers are blooming out here in Utah and it's a beautiful day, but it is cold. So thanks for coming back to my channel and watching this video, and I'll see y'all in my next one.